How do we deal with those physical symptoms of anxiety? So, in the course of what I do, I get asked a lot of anxiety questions. And this is probably the one I get asked the most because a lot of the time, the thing that disturbs us about anxiety is very much the physical sensations that seem to come with it. And whilst there are 1,001 different physical sensations that might come with anxiety, some of the most common ones are churning stomach, a rapid heart rate, rapid breathing, and of course, actual pain in our body, in our chest or in our muscles, where the muscles are just under so much tension, where we're in this constant fight or flight state. But the first thing to say here is that these are not symptoms. Symptoms are things that we get when we have an illness. They're indicators of illness. Now, anxiety isn't an illness, it's an emotion. As soon as we refer to the physical sensations that seem to come hand in hand with anxiety as symptoms, we're simply buying into that idea that anxiety is an indicator of illness, and it's not. Anxiety is a healthy human emotion. A lot of the time, some of the main problem here is that we've started to regard it as wrong that we feel anxious. And that's inevitably what causes us to then feel an increasing amount of anxiety whenever we feel even the slightest trace of anxiety. I see a lot of clients that have conflated the two ideas, the emotion of anxiety and the physical sensations that might come with it. They've started to interpret the physical sensation itself as the anxiety, when in truth, it's our body responding to the emotion of anxiety. And let's be clear here about what anxiety is actually trying to achieve. All of our emotions have a purpose, after all. If fear is to move away from danger, if anger is to right the wrong that has been done to us, anxiety is simply a part of our subconscious saying, this is the thing that we think demands our conscious attention right now. Yes, it can be something scary, it can be imminent threat, or it could just be something fairly mundane that seems to be the next most important thing. It could even be our desire to move towards something positive. Whatever is the next important thing on the list, that's what our mind will use anxiety to focus our attention on. The only time the anxiety response becomes visceral and physical, that isn't actually anxiety. That's fear. That's when the thing that our mind is focusing us on contains some perceived level of threat. And in that instance, what's the appropriate response to threat? To go into some level of fight or flight response. It's the fight or flight response that contains all of those physical sensations as we fill with adrenaline to take action against the imminent threat. Now, this might seem like a fairly arbitrary distinction, but it's actually really important because the reason we've started to fear our physical responses is because we've started to perceive them as a malfunctioning anxiety response. There's something broken up here, something's going wrong with us, when in truth, it's a completely healthy fear response. That's the job of our body when we perceive danger, is to go into fight or flight. So this is actually a perfectly functional and appropriate response. Now, I know you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, but there's no real reason why I should be in a fight or flight response right now. There's nothing around me in my environment that is threatening me. The only thing I'm afraid of is how anxious I might be. And there's the thing. That's why you're going into fight or flight, because you've started to perceive anxiety to be a problem. Anxiety has become the thing you're afraid of, the thing you regard to be threatening you. So whenever you feel even the mildest sensation of anxiety, you click straight into that next level fight or flight fear response. And this is where the solution lies. As soon as we can accept the way we're feeling as entirely appropriate based on that minor mistake that our mind is currently making, then that's when we stop fearing those physical sensations. I know we might think they're inherently unpleasant, that's why we're afraid of them. But in truth, all of these sensations that we describe, most of them we might actually deliberately induce in ourselves when we're doing something exciting or thrilling. All of that racing heart and fast breathing and tension in the muscles, there's a lot of really enjoyable things we do that also contain those exact same physical sensations. The only reason we fear them in the case of an anxiety or fear response is because we don't think it's appropriate that they're occurring. We've perceived it to be the malfunction. So our solution lies in realizing that this is not a malfunction. This is simply right now what we would call a confusion in the subconscious. Our mind has mistakenly got the idea that anxiety is a threat and thus is triggering the threat response in the face of anything that makes us feel anxious, in the face of anything that we feel we need to focus on of some importance right now. So how do we deal with these physical sensations? Well, when we stop regarding them as a threat, they will naturally dissipate. They will no longer hold any fear for us, and so the fear response will stop being triggered. But if you want to know a little bit more about how we actually do that, then I want you to watch this next video about how we stop resisting those physical sensations.